Happy Tuesday, everybody. We got a box of goodies from Norm today. It finally showed up. Pretty excited here. We got our new front pulley, brand new. We have our new splined clutch disc. There again, completely brand new. Norm got the parts cast and machined them all. Look awesome. He sent the original power unit governor, mainly so we can use this gear potentially. He sent the oil level float and pickup screen that was in the power unit engine, so we can use that one because it's a lot better shape. It's, currently dirty, but it's not rusted holes through it or anything. A lot better shape than the one I had, so we can use that. And whichever one of these is in better shape, we can use. The key for the front pulley, that was just the template I had made for the spline, and a little linkage that goes from the governor to the intake butterfly. Don't even know for sure if that is the right same linkage or not. We'll have to do some dry fitting to confirm that. And then what are the odds that that actually comes loose? Pretty crusty, but if it does, and it is the right, it'll save us a lot of work. We won't have to fabricate a new one. So let's see what fits. Woohoo! Front pulley works. I don't have the key in there or anything. We can deal with that later, but looks like it lines up where it should, the best I can tell, just eyeballing it here. So now I can confirm a belt length and get that project going. Okay, next question and thing to address. We're looking up from the bottom now. So the front of the crank, okay, back up. So with the pulley fully seated up against the crankshaft there, which everything looks like it lines up where it should as far as the belt lining up there. So I think that's where it actually should be, towards the back of the block. The front of the crank sticks out enough where the crank claw here won't seat against the front pulley. So the next question is because I'm mixing and matching parts again, on an actual Allis parts, how is this supposed to be? Is there a spacer behind the crank claw here, or is this not the right crank claw, or is the Allis crankshaft shorter? Because I can't just thread this all the way on because it's not fully threaded. And even if I could thread it all the way on, the pin for the cross pin here wouldn't have a place to go because it would hit the end of the shaft would hit the end of the crankshaft before the cross pin would engage, if that makes sense, because that's shallower. This is hard to show. Hopefully that makes sense. So, I mean, I think it's as simple as putting a spacer behind this, putting a spacer between these two. Or I guess another way to look at it too, if depending on what the answer is with this, if this is original or not. I'm kind of guessing this is different than the actual Allis crank claw. Where does the claws come out in relation to, or I guess a better way to ask would be, where does that pin location in the claw come out in relation to like the front of the pulley? Maybe that'd be a good way to figure things out. So yeah, that's, I guess, something else we'll have to deal with. Either way, we can make this work. It's just a matter of figuring out what the best option is, I guess. So anybody that has any info there, measurements, appreciate it. Okay, belt length is right at 44 3/4 of an inch. for the center of the play, and that gives you a 1/4 inch either direction. So it goes from 44.5 to 45 if you put the stops to either end of the adjustment. So 44 3/4 inside length. Scratch that, it's really 44 7/8. This fabric tape is not quite accurate as far as length goes. It gets a little accumulative error over time. It starts out right, but as you go along, it starts getting a little bit different to a true tape measure, one that I trust. So yeah, 44 7/8. Okay, onto the clutch. Fits in the flywheel. The original discs work with it, so we can make the new discs to the same size. There was a couple of comments, people suggesting that maybe our pack thickness needed to be thicker to make the throw bearing stick out farther. We actually already considered that, and that is not the case here, because we can only go to the height of these pins in the flywheel as far as stack thickness. Those are the pins that engage this ramped disc and keep that turning with the flywheel. Because remember, this is, when the clutch is disengaged, this is spinning, but the ramped disc stays in relation to the flywheel. So this is, that right there is basically your difference between engaged and disengaged. That little bit of, play in the pack thickness there. So yeah, moving on, we'll try putting this in here and see if something makes more sense. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is why you have to have all the pieces of your puzzle before you try to put it together. All that head scratching was for nothing. I think we won. Having that center disc in there made all the difference, because it's basically, it put that pulley on top of the splined disc. So when you compressed it, I think it had something to do with all those linkages in there, those 3 arms pivoting. I think they were like over-centered is the best way I can try to explain it. But when you have everything where it should be, it all works. We got plenty of room for the clutch fork like it should be. So that's good news there. We still got adjustability in the, I can't move it with one hand, but it was moving. There we go, the wrong way. So this would be, the clutch should be running, slipping, too loose. But we also, remember, we also still have those 2 original friction discs in here. Once we put the new friction discs in there, it'll be just a little bit thicker yet. Everything should be back to original specs, actually. So we should be tight probably about there, I'm guessing. Right now, so that would be, the ramps are touching those 3 pads. So probably when you actually get in the tractor and adjust it, we'll go a little bit more, so nothing, got the hiccups. So nothing is slipping. And but basically, I should step back and mention, this is at the lowest part of those ramps. So then as your clutch wears over time, you can just continue adjusting these tighter and tighter as those discs wear thinner and thinner. So I think we're good. I'm happy. I can see this is going to be about as much fun as putting any clutch in any piece of machinery, as far as getting all the parts and pieces lined up so that output shaft of the transmission lines up with the splines of the spline disc, and also lines up with the pilot bearing in the flywheel there. So I bet you that's probably going to be a little bit of hassle to get that all together, but I'm just happy that I think we got her figured out. I think we won. All that head scratching, like I said, was basically for nothing. We had it right the whole time. We just didn't have all the puzzle pieces here. So big thank you to Norm. Really appreciate everything you've done to help me with this project. Making all these parts. I wouldn't be able to do this restoration without your help. Very much appreciated. Good job on all this stuff. I can't thank you enough. I think I'll probably call it a night here, but now that we got some stuff for the clutch, I'll probably end up pulling this engine back out one of these nights after work. I'll come out, pull the engine back out, put the clutch and stuff back on, the flywheel back on the engine, make sure those studs on the back of the crank work with that spline disc would be the next fitment thing to see if I need to change anything as far as those studs go. And then I think we should be good to go as far as clutch stuff goes. I think we got everything figured out at this point. So yeah, I'll see you guys one of these other nights. Happy Friday. I got the front pulley pretty much figured out here. I got the threads cleaned up on the inside of this claw, so that thread's on there nice now. I ran a die even over through the threads on the end of the crank here. I played around with some spacer washers, and like I initially thought, having the pulley all the way back lines up the belt the best with the fan, so we're just going to go with that and put the spacers between the pulley and the front here. I got the key put in the keyway, and the pulley fits on there beautifully. Just a light little tap with the hammer seats it on there. I had to make just because of the way everything came out, you know, it's not perfect as far as everything goes, locating the pulley front to back. The keyway isn't in the middle of the pulley like ideally it should be. Only about the rear half of the key is actually engaging, which I think should be just fine for what it's doing. It's just driving a belt for a fan. It's not like you're driving a transmission or something. So I had to make keyways in the spacer washers as well to fit on there. But that all worked out good. Three with keyways, two without. And then the claw. And then that way we can pretty much commit to figuring out final locations for the cross pin here in the hand crank. That Sharpie is where factory would be. We're going to actually have to back that off just a little bit because that's touching the front of the crankshaft there. And I don't want it to touch, you know, I want it to be a little bit of space there. So we'll move that pin just a little bit farther towards the end so it engages in the dog before it actually bottoms out. And then the rest location, the store position, we'll have to adjust that a little bit as well too, because factory would sit about there, but that ain't gonna work because my crankshaft is that whatever half an inch farther. So basically we're gonna have to just have the crank out just, you know, probably that half inch more, probably something like so, just so it clears the front. So no big deal there. We'll just adjust those locations a little bit and that'll all be good to go. Cross pin or cross drill them for the pins and get them all made up here one of these days. I, of course, took the engine back out so I could check clutch disc to stud clearance, and no issues there. And that's without a friction disc, so it's actually going to be more clearance than what there actually is at the moment. So we're good there. And even better news, we go over to our spline. We check our spline on our output shaft, and look at that. Beautiful, perfect. Just a little bit of play, just like you want, because that disc has to float on that shaft when you engage and disengage the clutch. So in my opinion, that's about as perfect as a guy can get. Good job, Norm. Appreciate it. That's beautiful. So yeah, I think we'll continue working on a few little details here, and I'll check back a little bit later. Working on the governor type stuff a little bit. I pulled the gear off of that one. It appears to be the same as what was on the orange governor, so I think we'll use that one then. I mocked up just the empty case of the governor onto the engine just to see if that linkage that came with it looked right, and it does. So we can put some effort into trying to see if we can get that freed up, and depending on how that goes, we'll either be good or we'll make a new one if we end up breaking it based on the original. So we're gaining on her here. We must be living right, guys. Look at that, came right apart, didn't even put up a struggle. Threads look good. I think we might be able to use it. Vroom, 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 vroom. Got the little pins all out and everything. Can you believe those came out? Little remnants of the cotter pins. So yeah, we should be good to go there. Give her a little sandblast to clean her up, but yeah, nice. Moving on. Okay, making progress on some governor stuff here. We had a video chat with David Dickmeyer. We looked at his parts on his governor, which he had taken apart previously, to compare notes. I didn't know how this disc was attached to this rod, or what I thought was attached to, because mine was stuck. This was seized onto the shaft. So I was assuming it was pinned or some type of a mechanical fastener. Turns out that there is no fastener. Mine was just rusted on there. I was able to get it loose. Actually, I just clamped that end into a vise and pulled on the whole housing a little bit a few times, and it luckily it worked its way free. And then we also figured out a mystery of, he wasn't sure, you know, when he pulled it apart, he wasn't sure how it all went back together. And we were thinking that like this fork went in the middle here somewhere. Turns out it doesn't. I looked back on my footage when I took mine apart, and the fork is on the end here, or the very front of the governor, so to speak. So that spring nests on there. This disc goes into this disc. This is all on the rod through the housing, of course, but you can't see nothing in there, so I'll show it to you outside. So that goes on there like so, and then this threads on to here. So this is your, you know, connected to your throttle. So when you pull back on that, that is putting more pressure back on your fork, which is putting more, you know, tipping your throttle lever back, which is putting pressure back on the butterfly, which is opening it. Forward is closed butterfly, back is open. So when you pull back on that, your throttle control, essentially you're overriding the governor and opening up your butterfly. And the governor wants to close. That's its job in life, is to close the throttle butterfly. So as these weights spin open, that's pushing it back. It wants to close the butterfly, but you're counteracting that in opening the butterfly, if that makes sense. And then this is so your fine adjustment to adjust how sensitive your governor is. How exactly that needs to be adjusted, I don't know at this point, but in and out, you know, because if you're compressing this little spring, your governor is going to be I'm going to think about this, make sure I say it right, less sensitive, I believe. And then if it's more springy, it's going to be less oh, let's see, did I say that wrong? I think I said that wrong. If it's stiffer, it's going to be a less sensitive governor. More springy is a more, no, that isn't right either. And then you also have this adjustment on here as well. So yeah, I'm not sure how that exactly all gets set up, but we'll figure that out. But I think now we got it all figured out enough where we can basically put this back together, I think. Clean everything up good, make some new gaskets, and I think we're good. We're just going to leave this for now. I think that'll be okay. I turned these pins 90 degrees, took them out and reinstalled them 90 degrees. So when it's on a new wear surface, those should be good to go. We got our new gear, clean that up. Should be good with governor stuff. So if I'm thinking about this right, this little collar, that would be your limit stop for your throttle, basically. That would be wide open. That'll bottom out so your governor can't go any farther, I think is how that works. As far as how you fine tune this on the inner shaft for the little spring, I'm not sure, but I think this would be your, like I said, that'd be wide open, I think. Okay, so I got this adjustment freed up too, just for future reference where it was nearly bottomed out with adjustment as it was, but it's loose now, so I can adjust it if I need to. One last thing I did here before I can do final cleanup and reassembly, there should be an oil hole to lube your shaft and your bearing here, right? So there's a slot where the oil that's flinging around can work its way in and lube that shaft. Well, on this half, it should be the same thing. The oil flinging around goes in that pocket, and it should go down into this bearing, right? Babbitt. Well, there was no hole there, so I drilled it out, so there is now. So that shaft should get some lube now. So I don't know if that was a factory oversight or if this has been repaired in the past and that person didn't do it or what, but I added it. We're good now. Got just about everything cleaned up for the governor. I even did one step better. I took the old Babbitt bearing out of this one, and I took the good one out of my spare one and put it into this one. So that takes up all the play on that end of that shaft as well. Nice and snug there too, so even better than new. I got to round up a little thin, paper thin gasket for this surface and cut that out, and then I think we're ready to put this back together. Okay, governor going back together. I cut a couple of felt washers to put in here because the other governor actually had one, at least on this side. I thought that was a pretty decent idea to maybe slow down the oil leaks coming out that shaft on either side a little bit. I don't think it'll hurt anything. So I'll put a little oil on them and continue assembling here. Got a thin paper gasket cut for in between the two. The rest of it's pretty self-explanatory. Put it back together the opposite way we took it apart. Nice. One fully assembled governor. Got the gear pressed on, lock nut on, cotter key, Cotter key up in that one. That one's just loose, the tapered pin yet, because I'm going to have to figure out the coupler yet between the governor and the mag. So I might end up taking that off and bringing it to the machine shop so they can make it fit that tangs appropriately. But yeah, one governor. Spins nice. Basically no play end to end. No play up and down. Lever moves smoothly. Nice. Moving on. Okay, as long as we're working on governors, let's work on governor linkages a little bit. So I straightened out the rod that goes back to the throttle lever, and I figured out some sash chain to hook onto the end of it, and to the hook onto the end of here. Of course, this is too long yet. I don't know exactly how long this needs to be yet. We'll have to get this all hooked up first, and then I can just take out the appropriate amount of links there. I got to get a piece of 3/16 rod ordered up so we can make up the linkage that goes from the pivot arm there back to the actual end of the governor. So yeah, I think it all kind of makes sense now. If I haven't explained it well enough yet. So you pull back on the rod, which pulls back on the chain, which pivots this lever here, which pulls back on the linkage here, which connects to here. So when you pull back on that, because the governor wants to close, and when you pull back on that rod, that's counteracting the governor, basically overriding the governor, which is affecting the butterfly here on the intake. So yeah, pretty simple stuff. So yeah, let's probably figure out magneto bracket and magneto now, so we can get next week get that coupler ordered up to the machine shop to have them make up one of them for me, because that'll be the next thing we'll need. I rounded up some of the stuff for gas line this afternoon as well. I'm still working on getting the right fittings and whatnot. Compression fitting here, some 5/16 copper line, and I got to come up with the correct compression elbow out of the carburetor, because the one that was in there was actually not the right size. Best I can tell, it was a 1/4 inch when it should be 5/16. So I'll have to round up a different fitting for there. So this morning, or actually this afternoon I guess, I got the gasket for the governor tuned up to fit. Got that temporarily bolted on there. I put my mag bracket on and magneto, and did a whole bunch of measuring and checking with squares and rechecking and everything. And I'm in the process of drilling out the new holes for the magneto in the bracket. I had to move it basically about 5/8 farther towards the front of the tractor. So I will finish drilling them out, and we'll see how things came out. Yeah, a little fine tuning, and magneto fits on there properly. I got my 1/2 inch distance between governor and magneto tang there. That's what this old coupling that's wrong for this application is simulating the distance. That fits in there nicely. So now I can make up a little blueprint for the machinist to make up a coupling for me. I'll drop that off this week. And basically, once I make an arm here, that part of the project will be done as well. Norm has to get me a template of that yet. I mean, I suppose I could figure it out, but he's got an original, so it'd be a lot easier if I got a little, have him trace it out on a piece of cardboard box or cereal box or something, you know, a little template. So yeah, I'll make up a little blueprint here, and then we'll move on to something else. Cleaned out the threaded holes for these 4 mystery holes in the rear plate and cleaned up the threads on 4 extra bolts, original heavy-headed bolts I had. Just to fill those holes for now. Still have no idea what those are for, what the application is on them. But for now, we'll just put a bolt in them just to keep the water and bugs and whatever out of there. Got the other intake filter screen cleaned up. It looks dirty on camera yet, but that's just a little bit of tarnish or whatever on the brass. It actually is clean and not dirt. Much better than the original one that we had with holes and rust through. And so yeah, we're good to go there. Yeah, on camera that looks really dirty. It's really not though. Trust me. I just cleaned it. So now the next step is to see which is in better shape, this one or the one that we had already cleaned up there a few weeks back. But I'm about out of time here for tonight. I should go home and make supper. I don't know if I'll be back out after supper tonight or not. But so if not, I think I'll sign off now. And hopefully see you guys next week. Don't forget to mark your calendars for the Orange Spectacular. July 23rd, 4th, and 5th of this year at Hutchinson, Minnesota. I will try to be there, and I will hopefully have this with me. Cross your fingers. See y'all.